All right. How about you? Want to stay out there playing golf this morning?
Now, yes,
I saw a line forming when I
did you
came
do your
in.
match with Nick? How'd you do?
I was erratic and he was steady, so I lost.
It's the way it ought to be. If you aren't good,
Right.
you-
That's right.
Like, sir? Oh,
You wasn't on steady.
I'm gonna put it on your tab.
He was hitting the ball.
Bill, you need one?
did he play the whites or the golds with you?
He played the goals with him.
I told him he was overthinking it. He used to play in the whites. He had to use his distance and play the, but
You look like you were having some controversy yesterday settling up your bets after your round. It was getting a little raucous over there at your table.
Oh. The real problem is, I went off in the first group.
Yeah.
There were 3 threesomes and a foursome. We finished in 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Unless I missed
Would have been
that
3 and a
one.
half, but we ran into a foursome, which was perfectly fine. It was
Yeah.
The next group came in at 4.5 hours.
What, behind you?
Yeah, and the next group behind them wasn't pushing them, which is why these guys played slow.
Yeah.
And the foursome who went off last was all pissed off because they were pushing the threesomes in front of them, which should never happen.
Right.
But you know, we make a point that you got to be done in 4 hours or less.
Yeah.
And this was,
We had that thing on Saturday, or Friday.
yeah, I heard that.
How you doing? Good. How have you been? Good.
On number 5, or number 6, and the 2 3.
present? Sorry.
Ashworth present.
McDonald present.
Right present.
Holloway present.
Clark present.
We have a quorum. So can we all stand for a minute of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anyone object to the consent agenda? Hearing nothing, consent agenda is approved by common consent. Public hearings. Conditional use permit, CUP 2026-02. Application from the Cape Charles Rosenwald School Restoration Initiative for the review of a comprehensive sign plan as part of a conditional use permit application in the Commercial District C1 per Cape Charles Town Code, Chapter 32, Article 5, Section 32-112, Bull Lakes F. So,
Is this one that she normally would present to you? I wasn't sure if she present now or during the discussion.
Who?
Whomever
Well,
did it.
the applicant, but,
Yeah,
or,
Oh, the
you-
applicant?
You do the first
That's
summary.
what I was thinking. I didn't know which time you did that. Okay, as you said, this is a conditional use permit for the Cape Charles Rosenwald School Restoration Initiative at 1500 Old Cape Charles Road.
sorry.
The proposal would allow for the installation of 6 freestanding interpretive kiosk signs and 1 freestanding historical marker on the Cape Charles Rosenwald School property. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a comprehensive sign plan consisting of 6 freestanding signs, 3 measuring 36 inches by 24 inches, and 3 measuring 60 inches by 36 inches, and 1 freestanding historical marker measuring 36 inches by 48 inches. And for why they have to come forward to the Planning Commission and the Town Council for a conditional use permit is the zoning ordinance requirement per the Cape Charles Town Code, Chapter 32, Article 5, Section 32-112F. Special exceptions. Comprehensive sign plans may be approved as part of a conditional use permit in commercial, heavy, and light industrial and harbor districts as part of a subdivision approval for 3 lots or greater in all zoning districts. The comprehensive sign plan shall establish the time, manner, and placement of signs, the frequency of message changes, the materials, the hours of lighting, the height of the signs, the total number of square feet of sign surface, and the number of signs to be placed on site. The height of signs shall not be modified above the height permitted in the zoning ordinance. And then for the conditional use issuance is the Cape Charles Town Code, Chapter 32, Article 4, Section 32-92B. Conditional use permits may be issued for any of the conditional uses for which a use permit is required by the provision of this ordinance in the specific districts, provided that the Town Council, upon recommendation from the Planning Commission, shall find that after a duly advertised public hearing, the use will not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use, or adversely affect other land uses within the particular surrounding neighborhood. 2, be detrimental to public welfare or injurious, to property or improvements in the neighborhood. And 3, being will not be in conflict with the purpose of the comprehensive plan of the town of Cape Charles. And it goes on to state, in granting any conditional use permit, the town council shall designate such conditions as it determines to carry out the intent of this ordinance. Additionally, approval of a conditional use permit shall be valid only for the specific use and location designated for 1 year after approval by the town council and completion of the additional permit process requested in the application. The applicant shall apply for or have applied for additional permits as provided to the Planning Commission and as required by the zoning administrator within 1 month of approval by the town council. If the applicant fails to apply for any such permit within this period, the conditional use permit shall be, the conditional use permit shall be effective as of the date. 30 days after town council approval, unless town council allows for additional time for such application or applications. And then if not acted upon within 1 year, the conditional use permit shall become null and void unless an extension of the time is approved by the town council for good cause shown before the expiration of the conditional use permit. The staff analysis for this conditional use permit is that the proposed signage is intended to provide education and historical information regarding the Rosenwald School and its significance to the town of Cape Charles. After review, the staff has found that the application presented to the Planning Commission by the Cape Charles Rosenwald School Restoration Initiative for approval of a comprehensive sign plan that allows for 6 freestanding signs and 1 freestanding historical marker has demonstrated consistency and adherence to the requirements laid out in Article 5, Section 32-112F. And it says that I'm recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to Town Council to approve the application for a conditional use permit for the installation of 6 freestanding signs and 1 historical marker at the Cape Charles Impact Center for the reasons contained herein. Depending on the comments received and heard during the public hearing, the Planning Commission may need to consider additional factors when developing its motion. And included in this packet, we have the conditional use permit application, the application for zoning clearance, and the Article 5 signs of the Cape Charles Town Code.
Questions? Any questions?
There's no lighting on these signs, right?
Excuse me?
There's no lighting on these signs, right?
Not that I'm aware of. I think so. The applicant is here if you have questions.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward and say anything?
I don't think so, unless you have any questions.
Okay,
Put
that's,
together a
that's
substantial package, so.
that's fine. Are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
All right. There are no public comments. Any further discussion? If no further comments, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing is closed. Moving on to the second public hearing. Zoning text amendment, ZTA 2026-03, application from the town of Cape Charles to add new regulations for mobile food and/or beverage units by amending the Cape Charles zoning ordinance by adding section 32-105 to Article 4, general regulations applicable to all districts. Who's going to handle this one?
Okay, as you read, this is a zoning text amendment to add new regulations for mobile food and/or beverage units. As I turn around, I'm going to be reading from page, I don't know which one you all have, 21. This is the background of this, why this came to be. Over the past 4 years, the town of Cape Charles has seen a noticeably increase in mobile food vendors operating in the community. These vendors are most commonly located along Bay Avenue at the beach during the summer season, as well as at various events and festivals held throughout the year. In response to the growth, town staff identified a need to establish a standardized regulatory framework that clearly defines acceptable types of mobile food units, operating procedures within the town, and the required approvals for operation. Since the beginning of 2026, staff from the Finance Department, the Town Manager's Office, and the Planning and Zoning Department have collaborated to assess current conditions, identify regulatory gaps, and clarify the intended role of mobile food vendors in the town's business and tourism economy. On April 9, 2026, during the Town Council work session, the Town Council reviewed the draft zoning ordinance to modernize and clarify regulations governing mobile food vendors by 1, defining permitted types of mobile food units, 2, establishing a clear approval process, and 3, setting operational standards and conditions. During the meeting, the Town Council identified specific language changes to the proposed zoning text amendment that they would like to see in the next draft of the ordinance. At the May 21st, 2026 Town Council regular meeting and public hearing, the Town Council reviewed another draft of the proposed ordinance. The Town Council adopted Resolution of Intent 2026-0521, referring Zoning Text Amendment 2026-03 to the Planning Commission to convene and hold the necessary public hearings. Then for the comprehensive plan review, did you all want me to read that too? Staff reviewed the proposed zoning text amendment to Article 4, general regulations applicable to all districts, and determined it aligns with the core principles outlined in the comprehensive plan. Like the economy chapter that calls for promoting a lively economy built around accommodations, food services, healthcare, social services, retail trade, recreation, public administration, manufacturing, fisheries, maritime activities, and transportation. The comprehensive plan also calls for promoting and expanding business in a business-friendly environment. This ordinance directly supports these objectives by expanding opportunities in the food service and retail sectors by creating low-cost pathways for entrepreneurship and small business development. Furthermore, the comprehensive plan recognizes tourism as a significant component of Cape Charles's economic base, noting that the Cape Charles economy is evolving to support growth in other sectors, especially tourism and related sectors as maritime businesses decline nationwide. To further this objective, the plan seeks to maintain a healthy balance between year-round residents, tourists, and second homeowners in Cape Charles. By collaborating with organizations such as Eastern Shore Virginia Tourism and Cape Charles Main Street to promote Cape Charles as a destination and development events, particularly those centered on outdoor recreation that attract visitors. The ordinance aligns with the goals above by providing flexible food and beverage options for festivals, community events, beachfront activities, and peak tourist periods. Vendors can also enhance the visitor experience by offering an additional dining option and increasing the availability of food and beverages in areas where demand may fluctuate. Finally, by supporting tourism-related activities and visitor service businesses, the proposed ordinance advances the comprehensive plan's objective to strengthen Cape Charles's tourism economy while continuing to meet needs of residents and visitors alike. Finally, the proposed ordinance aligns with the comprehensive plan's community facilities and service goals and objectives. The plan encourages the town to create vibrant community facilities through flexible use and year-round programming, and it specifically calls for pursuing opportunities for art, public events, and markets. Mobile food and beverage vendors are commonly associated with these activities. They can provide services that enhance the experience of residents and visitors at community events, festivals, markets, and recreational activities. And then it goes through the zoning ordinance requirements. And the staff review states, staff has found that the proposed ordinance provides a clear regulatory framework for a use not currently addressed in the town zoning ordinance. As mobile food and beverage vendors continue to grow in popularity and become more closely associated with community events, tourism, and small business opportunities, establishing operations standards will provide clarity for vendors and the town. This is the proposed ordinance balances economic development opportunities with the need to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Mobile food and beverage vendors can contribute to the local economy by creating entrepreneurial opportunities, expanding food and beverage opportunities for residents and visitors, and supporting local events. Furthermore, the proposed regulations address key considerations including permitting requirements, location standards, parking and pedestrian considerations, waste disposal, signage requirements, operating hours, and compliance with applicable health and safety regulations. Based on the proposed operational standards and their demonstrated consistency with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, staff finds that the mobile food and/or beverage vending unit ordinance is a reasonable addition to the town zoning ordinance and would provide a beneficial tool to support economic development, tourism, and community events while protecting the character of Cape Charles and the interest of surrounding property owners. And then you do have a recommendation there that has been given to the Planning Commission. And also attached was the mobile food and beverage vending draft ordinance, zoning text amendment application, and the comprehensive plan.
Any questions for Tracy? Thank you, Tracy. No public comments? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Do we have, going on to number 5, citizen comment period for any item not subject to an advertised public hearing? Do we have anything? Unfinished business. Update on comprehensive plan deadlines per the DEQ's request.
I do believe you had spoken with Jack and there was going to be,
A committee.
and you can also let me know if this is correct, that there was going to be a subcommittee that was a working group that was going to take this on. So,
And Alan, you were part of that. Did you ever meet?
We did meet. It was me, Rick, who else was there? Rick?
Jack?
Yeah.
I can say, we discussed, we went through as much as we could trying to figure out, we were supposed to try to figure out a timeline and timetables of what this was. It was kind of difficult because we're still like not knowing what we're expected to come up with. And since that meeting, we did have a meeting with DEQ to walk us through more formally, and they have since then given us documents and reasonable timelines of what to expect. And so once me and Damien's our new hire, by the way, I didn't get a chance to introduce him yet, but very excited to have a replacement for Jack now. And we will pick that up, meet with DEQ, look at what we have, and then have another committee meeting to update with you guys.
Super, thank you for the update.
Yep.
Number 7, new business, conditional use permit, CUP 2026-02. Application from the Cape Charles Rosenwald School Restoration Initiative for the review of a comprehensive sign plan as part of a conditional use permit application in the Commercial District C1 per Cape Charles Town Code, Chapter 32, Article 5, Section 32-122F. Discussion. Anybody have any comment on,
Well-
on the signage?
I had kind of, the last go-round for their large sign out front, voiced some objection to the size of it. And although these are large signs, again, I don't really feel that there's an issue, in part because they're primarily off the street, they're behind the building, and in addition to that, they're at a 45-degree angle, so they're, not all of them, but most of them are diagonal, so their kind of visual impact will be minimized. So I have no issues with their proposal.
That was my feeling as well.
These are kind of like storyboards. These are kind of like storyboards, you know, I mean, they're all over, I mean, at all the
Yeah.
national parks and whatnot as well. So, I mean, it's an education thing, and that's my take on this. So, I think it's great. So, that's Bill Stram talking, so. Any other discussion? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to recommend to the town council to approve the application for the conditional use permit for the installation of 6 freestanding interpretive kiosk signs and 1 freestanding historical marker at the Cape Charles Impact Center for all the reasons contained herein.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit at the Cape Charles Rosenwald School, the Impact Center. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Unanimous. Thank you.
You sure you don't want to speak, Beth? Last chance. Okay.
All right. 7B, zoning text amendment, ZTA 2026-03, application of the town of Cape Charles to add new regulations for mobile food and/or beverage units by amending the Cape Charles zoning ordinance by adding section 32-105 to Article 4, general regulations applicable to all districts. I'm sure everybody's had an opportunity to read the draft ordinance since it was approved, semi-approved by the town council already. Any discussion on the draft ordinance?
I've got a handful of concerns
Okay.
and maybe require a question of Tracy or Rick. When written, it feels like this was written for Bay Avenue primarily and not the whole town. For example, if you have your generator, it needs to be pointing towards the beach. Well, if I put my food truck right outside here, then I gotta park it I can only park it that way to point it towards the beach. So there's some things in there that I have struggles with some of the wording. So, and we can go through that, but that was particularly one. And then there were some other things. When the town put this together, would we be comfortable with a food truck right out here on Randolph? I mean, it said all districts. I didn't see anything that limits us from putting it on any street in the entire town.
It does say it has to be in a commercially zoned district,
But
correct?
I thought what you said is it was for all districts when you read that. I'm trying to go back through.
Actually, it may say that, but I live right beside where 6 food trucks come.
But that's like,
Saturday, and that's not a commercial district.
but those are special events, right? Which I had these same concerns, and I was like, well, does that take care of it? Because it does say,
Where is that? Maybe I missed that when I went back through it.
Ian, I think one of the feedback from council was, at first, it was designed, written specifically for Bay Avenue, but at the last council meeting, they asked that, or Paul Grossman specifically asked that this would cover all districts, because the district really is just slightly bigger than what it was. So it really would be just inclusive of all of them, even though predominantly the use will be Bay. And then for the future, when the beach road master plan gets, the whole food truck designated area gets in there, it will only be for that small area that we designate of 5 food trucks. But until then, this was really written in light of Bay Avenue, because that's where the majority of this, and then there's the special things of special events that we do, that is outside of this.
But it's written, for example, I could go across the street from Dead Rise, move 151 feet, and I could put a food truck there. And that would be in a commercial district, it would be. And I just want to make sure that when we thought about this, that we really want that, or do we want to limit where this is applicable to more tightly in the way this was written?
Well, I think just another comment was, we had not updated this in a long time, and it's not been a problem, but because it is becoming a problem with trying to have consistent regulations for them, that, you know, anytime we go back to change, it just pushes this further back before we can approve it. So our thought was, we did the best we could with all of our staff coming together with the things that we felt were the big rocks of the change, where if we approve this and then we find areas like you're talking about now, we can go back and amend those later, but it secures the big things that we're trying to take care of right now.
So Tracy, like in section 3, paragraph 5, where it talks about if located on private or town property that is appropriately zoned for commercial activity, the applicant must submit a written approval from the property owner. Does that touch on that? I mean, does that keep me from having a food truck next to my house on Randolph? Or, I mean, that's a valid point. I agree with you.
That
I
would
mean,
only apply to private or town property, right? The street's not.
Yeah, so this
Private or
is
town property.
actually limited for that zone, which is commercial, and why they put that in there is, say, somebody wanted to put a food truck on someone else's property.
well, like Meatland, where the Two Sisters barbecue.
They need permission.
Right.
From the farmer meat land building owners, because they own that whole property.
But even if I gave them permission, they couldn't do it on my, not that I have room, but they couldn't do it in my backyard, could they? Right. Because I'm not zoned commercial.
You're not
Right.
zone commercial, correct?
And Bay is not zone commercial either.
I was going to ask you that.
And that's why we try to focus on that area, because that's a code allowance that we're saying we're allowing that.
Okay. But only on one side of it.
Right. On the one side, correct? Okay, on the beach side.
Yeah.
Mr. Town Manager, I did have a thought just now. Probably 90 or higher than 90% of where the food trucks go, it's not even town streets, it's VDOT.
Correct.
Do we have to run VDOT, this by VDOT?
No,
Okay.
no, because VDOT looks at us, council, to then have direction of how we want this set up. So they would say, create your codes,
Yeah,
and then they're fine with that, but they're not gonna dictate where it should go.
got it, thank you.
Good question, because I asked them too.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned the previous, you know, this has been around a while, and the 150-foot distance before, also, I think it also had a caveat that you could get permission to move closer if the brick and mortar establishment said it was okay. And for example, you know, Festive Fridays, initially, they were going to have all the food trucks down on Pine Street, which is right next to E&O. So I don't know, that's not written in here. I know maybe it wasn't a written thing, but I know it was brought up before. If you had permission, then you could do that. So I don't know if that needs to be something for consideration, because let's just think again here about Festive Fridays. And they have food trucks. And I don't know of any place on Mason Avenue or Strawberry or Pine that a food truck could go where it's not within 150 feet of an eating establishment.
And just as a follow-up to Bill's question, I'm just reading that provision now, section 4A1. It has to be when the establishment is closed to the public. So what happens when the establishment is open? No food truck in front of it?
That's how it reads, and then it says, because then if it's close to the public, subject to approval
Okay, so it would come to me, and then we would, in a conditional use permit, I can create restrictions and limitations, where one of my limitations would say, you would have to get approval by the restaurant owner to make sure that that's okay. And if they say yes, then I would sign the approval. That would be an example of that. So we will try to accommodate, but at the same time, it's gotta be reasonable for both. And if it takes away business from them, or they feel that it's gonna take away, and it's not conducive for their environment, then I would have not be able to agree to it.
So this doesn't create an implied restriction on any mobile food truck or beverage operating within 150 feet of an establishment when that establishment is open to the public?
I think the way it's written, I think it does.
Yeah, that's the way it reads.
You can only get. it
When it's
says something
closed.
You can
When
only
it's
get
closed.
the conditional use permit is if the establishment is closed.
It's closed.
It's closed, so I mean, when is this, you know, that's rare. Again, I
I
think,
mean, Rick, you could still have your discretion on the cup if you just deleted when the establishment is closed to the public.
And I'm trying to remember why we put that on there. Because I think that was from council. Give me a second, let me read you something real quick.
It's a description of food establishment, it's a good
Yeah.
for the truck vendor.
So I guess one thing I wanted to draw out is on number, section 3B5. We mentioned secular, but I think it's just important just to draw it back to your attention. The area where it says, if, so I guess it's the second sentence, if located on private property, town property that is adequately zoned for commercial activity, the applicant must submit a written approval from the property owner. Okay, so that's if it's on property, or town property, so either one of those, but it's an interesting point, says this excludes town-sponsored events. So for example, Festive Fridays has its own jurisdiction outside of this. So the Pine example would be, you know, with the food court, food vendors on Pine Street is allowed because it falls under a special use permit, not this zoning.
I understand that, but Alan, I read this as sort of the specific overruling the general.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things in here. I mean, there's that what you talked about. You know, when the establishment is closed. There's also they must be located in valid parking spaces. I seem to remember during Festive Fridays they kind of park them on the street in the roped off section of Mason, but they're in the street. They're not in parking spaces. So I mean, these things would seem to conflict with how we operate Festive Fridays.
Well, the Festive Fridays falls under special use permit, so that it's like an overlay. It gives us a special way to design things that's unique. So for example, if a food truck normally has permission to do something on the beach, if there's a special event that happens to happen, they lose that privilege because this now supersedes it. A special use permit, such as the 4th of July, how we do the 4th of July supersedes whatever they are allowed to use.
So there's no ordinance specific to the
That's-
town events. It's just all under a special use permit.
For that, correct? Yeah.
Then why have the language in at all?
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're creating, well, let me ask you this question before I ask that. are all the events in Central Park, are those also under a special use permit that's outside of this?
Yes. Because you have the concerts that falls under special use permit.
So it sounds like what we're doing here is just creating a rule for Bay Avenue.
That's why I said majority of the activities fall under Bay. That is correct.
Should we?
Then why wouldn't
So
we make
Bay
it specific to Bay?
Right.
I mean, if this is just for Bay, let's make it
Right.
specific to Bay.
Right.
But
I mean, there are other places, like at Meatland, where the Two Sisters barbecue trailer sets up. That's an example of something that's not on Bay. Or from time to time, there's been a market trailer at the base of the hump on the right side. It hasn't been there for a while, but that is technically a place where you could have a food trailer if you wanted to. I mean, there are a few spots.
Well, they also have the farmer's market.
is it the location that
That's
was
at
at
the museum.
Well, I think you're creating, I mean, this purports to create a rule that most of the activities, other than the Bay Avenue things, most of the activities that relate to this topic aren't governed by this zoning ordinance. They're all separate under a special use permit.
Well, so here's what, under the special use permit, it will refer to the standards that are allowed. So all of, like generators, size, signage, all that will refer to the ordinance. So we need an ordinance to show what's allowed for food trucks. The overlay, when I say it, is specifically for the event and the parameters, what you can do, because the event allows you to change some things up, where the ordinance is tight. And so this isn't gonna, this ordinance is specifically driven so that we know exactly where this is gonna be, the hours of operations, standards so that the carts are defined, the trailers are defined, which right now, it's almost like the Wild West.
Yeah.
We've tried to say, you can't do this, and they're like, we can do anything right now.
I mean, I would be okay with it, but, I mean, the way I would structure it would be, here are the basic rules, the times of operation, the generators, all that, and then put the specific reference in this ordinance as to what can be overridden by a special use permit. I mean, there's no reference in here, unless I missed it, to special use permits basically overriding this ordinance, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, but it says it on that 3B5, at the very, it says, this excludes town-sponsored events. All special events and town-sponsored events applicants must fill out a special events application, which includes a section identifying the number of mobile food and beverage vendors, and get approval from the town manager.
But that's a limitation on form, not substance. Right? I mean, that's not a limitation on what we're talking about. Like, I'm still trying to figure out the empty set here, which is a non-town sponsored event, right? And where and what the rules are specifically for the food trucks, right? I mean, you can carve out an exception for non-town sponsored events, but as you were saying, Alan, if there are if there are simple things that you can do, hours of operation, licensing, maintenance, trash collection, I mean, that's easy. That's going to apply regardless of whether or not it's a special use permit, right? Or whether or not it's not a special use permit. It's just, to Ian's example of a food truck setting up something across the street from AJ's. If AJ's is closed, right? So, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
And it also begs the question, Bill, are there any of these things that are not overridable by the special use permit? Could you grant a special use permit to go to 1 a.m.?
Well, that would be the time, the licensing, the maintenance, the garbage, the propane stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we have just normal standard, all that gets reviewed by our staff when we look at what they're proposing. To get a permit, it would have to comply with what our normal standards are for I guess I'm going,
But those standards aren't published in this. Where are those published, other than colloquially?
I mean, I think we would have to turn to other parts of our code, like when is curfew hours in a sense. So when is noise supposed to stop? That would dictate like 10 or 11 p.m. So that would kick in. Road closures, we would have to turn to that section of how that's run. I think there's other parts of code that do checks and balances for us when we do events. But when we're talking about, this was designed not in mind of events. It was in mind, just in the daily,
Day-to-day.
Right.
you know, the food vendors, the daily operations
That's
of that.
right.
That's what this was designed to do. So that's what I'm saying. If there's areas that you think that we should tighten up, let's do that. So is the location, is that an area that you think is the closed element that should be modified?
Well, to Clayton's point, I'm not sure that it's clear that someone couldn't put a food truck on VDOT property in front of Clayton's house. I mean, is that, or in the alley behind his house, or who owns that?
All right, give me a second. Let me just review that. Those are great questions.
So, and this is kind of along those lines, I think, Rick. Section 4A2 says that vendors may only be located in valid parking spaces.
Okay, so that answers your question. You can't put it in an alley.
No, I understand. But I mean, given the long-running concern of the town over parking, it means exactly what it says, right? You can pull into any valid parking space in town and set up your food truck. I mean, did town council sort of talk about the issue that could have on residential parking and whether there are going to be sort of specially designated parking spots for food trucks and vendors?
Because there's no designated parking spaces on Bay Avenue.
Right now, there's not.
No, that's right. Right now, there's not.
However, they are planning to, VDOT is coming for the next 14 months after the beach season, and they're gonna resurface all of our roads. I think they're gonna do Mason and Bay first, and they're gonna restrike everything. And so, but like if you look in the location, it's spelled out specifically in section 3, where this is actually targeted. It says mobile food and or beverage vendors may only be located in the non-residential side of Bay Avenue. So now we've located specifically where we're asking people for the food vendors. This is our food vendor ordinance. We're not saying you can be allowed anywhere else, except town property that you get approval from, or private property. So they can't just go set up on any street. We've narrowed it down to just that, on the non-residential side of Bay.
So if you read all those things, can't be within 150 feet of an existing brick and mortar. It's got to be in a valid parking space. We can question if Bay has them, but I think we could make our case that there is a valid parking spaces. And it must only be on Bay. Or somewhere else, you mentioned private property. So if I have an empty lot, I can put one out on an empty lot as long as it's owned commercially.
Correct.
So those, and so maybe we ought to.
There's flexibility.
Maybe we ought to specifically spell that out in location. And it ought to almost be simpler to start with. Location, 1A, Bay Avenue, and then on a valid parking spot on Bay Avenue, or 2, commercially
Zoned.
zoned private property.
With written permission from the owner.
With written
Right.
permission for the owner, which you document somewhere
Yeah,
else, but I think that
right.
would have been a lot, if those 2 spots were there and that's all we wanted to talk about. So you couldn't put them on Mason unless you get a special, and then maybe 3 with a special use permit from the town manager for town-sponsored event. And that would hit that piece, and then it would be, there'd be nobody else who could come lawyer you up if, with the holes that we've tried to lawyer up here, pardon me for anybody who's a lawyer.
I like it.
So I feel comfortable with that. I like the direction of that, where we spell out Bay Avenue or commercial zone property with permission from the owner. And the third would be a cup from the town manager. I don't think it should be tied to special events from that, because that's a whole different process. It could be, like we said, if we want to open it up, unless you want it to be that tight.
We don't want to make work either, if it's not necessary, so I think what you said there is perfectly valid.
I mean, Clayton's comment about the hump, like the little, vegetable cart by the hump, is that town property?
No, that's probably Canoni property.
And that's something we can't regulate either. It's ag related. We can't regulate it. State, they have state approval. If it's agriculture related, they can set it without a permit. I kind of tried to tackle that one last year.
So just so I am clear, Commissioner McDonald, so under 4A, the first one we want is number 3, local food and beverage vendors may only be located on the non-residential side of Bay Avenue,
And
and then
parked
2
in a valid parking space.
Okay, we want those 2 together.
I think that would work.
And then I have commercially zoned property for number 2,
Private.
Private.
private
Mhm.
property.
That is commercially zoned.
Mhm. And then 3 is the cup from town manager. But what about number 1 there? Did you want to leave that?
If we're only doing Bay Avenue and
That's-
things like that, it's kind of
That's-
irrelevant.
Yeah, if it's only Bay Avenue, then one goes away.
I agree. Because then the other kicks in, special use permit defines everything else from there.
And I
And
think
then in the special use permit, when we bring that to you as well, because we're gonna be,
Well,
Can I just say something real quick? If we take that out, we are taking also the footage that I believe we've always had in the ordinance from the existing brick and mortar food. So that means they could come on and they come on like Mason and with a cup from you, since we don't have this, and sell.
correct. If Rick approves
Yeah, that would
something,
be
he
his
could be within
approval.
150 feet of a,
Yeah.
And the only potential exception would be
Take that out.
private property that's commercially zoned, that's within 150 feet
So,
of
so we're keeping 1 in as written?
That's what I was asking, I didn't
I
know.
didn't think we needed.
I
So
think
we don't
it's,
need one at all.
I don't think it's necessary, but I mean, there's a question to me, like if there was private, maybe there is, if there was private property across the street from E&O, like that vacant lot that's by E&O, could someone put one there without your permission?
No.
not right now.
but if we wrote it what we just said, you'd be allowed to, because it's private property in a commercial district.
Yeah.
Subject to cup.
Subject to the owner of the lot's approval.
And the
not
cup or
yours.
just owner approval?
It says owner approval is what we said, so do we want to make that 150 feet additionally on that, what was the second set where we talked about the commercial
It's
property?
whatever, I just wanted to make sure before I'm just trying to get all the notice. So
I
right
mean,
now, we're at.
You made a comment there, Bill, did you say the, subject to the food establishment's approval?
No, the
The
owner
property owner's
approval of the lot, right, and Rick's approval. Which one, I'm just wondering, is it both or is it an or?
Well, I think I had mentioned earlier that, and go back to that, if somebody did put a food truck right across from E&O, and that's private, commercial property, that's well within 150 feet.
Right.
I think that with the approval of the brick and mortar restaurant, I mean, that, who would say, I mean,
That would be the biggest hiccup.
The brick and mortar would say no, because they want all the extra
that's what,
business.
well,
That's why
I
they
mean,
would
that's
say
what I'm
no.
saying. I mean, they ought to have a say in it. It was 150 feet, and everybody knows it now. And you have it in here, but yet, if we do away with that, just, it's a good thing. And what happens, the Northampton, same thing up there at Northampton Hotel, if it still has a food place in it, it'd be the same thing up there. You know, it's like saying,
So maybe it's 1, the beach side of Bay Avenue, 2, a private property that's commercially zoned, but if that's within 150 feet of a food establishment, you have to have the permission of the food establishment. And then 3, Rick's Food.
I would actually delete number 2 and keep 1 and 3. Everybody wants local businesses to flourish, but I'm worried that if you run into a situation where we have a lot of people downtown during the summer months or whatever, of course the food establishment is probably going to say, no, I don't give permission, because they're gonna want the business.
But then now you're gonna affect current business like Meatland and the one that's beside Bailey's. That's a trailer that's set up for ice cream.
Mhm,
That's on private lot.
mhm.
So you would affect those.
Yeah,
I
you
think
would-
it should-
I think it's, what do you mean affect?
Because if you eliminate 2, this would, you'd have to get permission, the way we have it now, permission from that person. So if you want to set up your food truck on a private lot, you have to get the permission to do it
From the established, from the lot owner.
from the lot owner.
But I thought, Alan, you were also saying you would have to get, in Bill's example, the permission of E&O.
I think that's the real question is,
Yeah.
do we all feel that it's in the best interest of the town to allow the veto power of
The business
150 feet
Correct.
to an existing business?
That's the
Or are
question.
we better off saying, just like that ice cream truck, because it's probably 150 feet within dead rise, they could say, no, you can't have it.
or it's also Ajax too.
Yeah.
Sure,
I mean, so-
right. That's my point.
Yeah, so the question
Maybe
is,
erosion.
do we pull out that 150 feet and just say if someone wants a food truck on a private piece of property that's commercially zoned, they can go do it, it's
Or-
new business that
Right,
comes
or
in.
you just pull out when the establishment is closed to the public and you just leave permission to operate, subject to approval of CUP by town manager.
You don't, you wanna have to keep going back to the town manager for every,
It's not that tough. There's control in it.
Is there an existing cup for like the ice cream place you're talking about? Or Meatland?
I'm not aware. It's before my time.
Well, they
I don't
haven't
think-
been, they've only been operating there a year. It's their second year.
Yeah, this is second.
Do you remember the pad that Air put in on that piece of property there before he sold it to Kemp? Like that, he put that pad in for a food truck that was there for a while. Did we shut that down or did we?
No, that actually, the first one was a little, I wanna say like taco truck, and then that moved in between where, Busty's used to be, I
Yeah.
believe it's a little estate.
Yeah.
Now that it went right there in the middle, and then the other one, I really don't know what happened to that, I'm thinking maybe they were not, their hours were not maybe open enough. I think it was a hard position because you've got everybody there on the day, and people don't think it's a
Yeah.
walking routes.
I would keep it with the business owner's discretion along with Rick. I don't think it's gonna happen that often. And believe it or not, most of those brick and mortar people, there was nobody more instrumental in starting Smashers than John Dempster. I mean, they love it when they take off the load in the peak season.
This is giving, my concern with the veto power is that it's going to give the individual business owner undue license to select who can
Mhm.
operate within 150 feet. They effectively can say,
Yeah,
you're okay,
yeah, you're
you're
not.
not okay, you're not okay, you're okay. And who knows what the motivations will be
Yeah, that's
for
true.
making those decisions.
Well, what if we made it Rick's approval?
That's my suggestion.
So the battle that I've seen over the years, it's not just here, but even the other places I was in Colorado, the battle is always of how we prioritize a brick and mortar versus a food vendor. You know, the town, I see it kind of like you need both. We have so many tourists here that the lines would be forever if they had to wait into the restaurant. So
That's
we
exactly,
desperately-
exactly.
We need the food trucks.
No doubt.
Especially for the beach.
Absolutely.
Visitors. It's like, we don't have enough capacity. It's too much. So
Right.
we need both of them. But the pushback is always, oh, now you favor them more than us.
No.
So it's always this.
No.
Yeah, and
We are creating a neutral platform on which competitors can compete, and may the best vendor win.
So, Bill, what you're proposing would be language that would have gone into that second paragraph that says, if on commercially zoned property, privately owned, that they are free to go if it's outside of 150 feet of a existing brick and mortar food vendor.
Or within 150
And if it's
feet, whatever it
within,
is.
and if it's within 150 feet,
Yeah, okay.
they get a special use permit from the
Mhm.
town manager.
Okay.
And you don't need, they'd have to apply for a special use permit from the town manager, and you would have the discretion then to go do that, and we would not have
Right.
a veto by the brick and mortar folks.
I
That's
mean,
what I'm hearing,
think-
that's how I would
think
word what
about-
you just said.
Think about what could go behind the scenes over an off-site vendor trying to get approval from an existing business.
No,
You can, I mean, the permutations are numerous.
the other side of that coin, though, just so I say it out loud, though, and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all, but, you know, the brick and mortar people are the people who have invested, who employ people, who stay open in February when they do $300 worth of business and go in the hole just to basically be there for the community, and that if somebody can just swoop in when the getting's good and skim off the top and then hook up their trailer and take off, that they feel that that's sometimes unfair. As much as they like seeing them, I'm saying the same thing on both sides of the coin. They like it to take the load off sometimes, but I don't know. My thing would, I would go more with stick with the 150. You want to build a restaurant on your commercial property? Go for it.
But Clayton, that's gonna ban, well, it's gonna ban anything on Mason Avenue, everything's moving on.
Probably.
What about, I've seen in a previous code where the town manager could designate a location like such on Mason Avenue. And then that would be a designated food truck spots. You know, we could have it named and everything.
And that gets to the parking issue.
Yeah, so then,
Correct.
that's the other thing I don't like about
So
it.
it is in the parking, because it says you have to be in town parking.
Any valid parking spot.
Yeah, so I designate on Mason, because this is written towards Bay,
Right.
and we can say, and, you know, the town manager can designate a location, you know, that would be appropriate for a food truck vendor, or vendors.
I think we're thinking that, we're talking about someone who's putting it on the pad on John, Kemp's
Kemp's,
lot.
right.
It's not taking up a parking spot, it's not taking a bunch of other things. You're talking about allowing them to do it right there on the street, because that's what you can designate.
Correct. I'm trying to think of something that we say, you designate me the authority, and I can designate an area on Mason, so that we can protect that. No business is gonna tell me that I can't do that, or they can't do it, because I have the power to do that. So we can accomplish that, and it's in a commercial area. I'm not addressing the private property. And so, and the way the code is written right now, it's sort of like, do we add that where you can get permission from the private owner? Do you want to tie that also with a town manager's approval? Because I think that was one of the things that you suggested a second ago. Commercial zoning property on private property with permission from the owner. And then also, is that a CUP or is that a total set? That's a right.
Only if it's within 150 feet of a brick and mortar, then
Right.
you'd need a CUP, right?
Right. Correct.
Well, that kind of settles that thing. I mean, that sounds pretty clear.
Just so it's your,
Yeah, if it's within 150 feet of it, they'd have to come to me.
correct.
I like that.
I'm
And
personally
then
fine with
the
that.
CUP, then I can say, no, we're gonna go talk to the owner. make sure he's good with it. That could be a restriction. I could create, I mean, that's allowable.
It's your discretion.
Yeah, it's my discretion.
You could also go to the brick and mortar owner and say, we have this person that wants to put a truck here. What are your thoughts?
I still think that doesn't entirely get us toward a neutral platform where we're not picking winners and losers in the marketplace, but it's better than what we have here.
But you know, the other thing that it gives me the leeway though, if that one business owner has an issue, I could go to another one who may not have an issue. You see what I'm saying?
Or you may just approve it and say, the heck with that business
Right.
owner.
That's right.
You may find their reason to be just unpersuasive.
So then our number one right now, that mentions on it for the, I'm gonna put that in the number three. The one, the new three categories that we mentioned.
Yeah, that'd be part of the one, number two, the 150 feet.
152 goes with the, 150 feet goes with the commercially owned property.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So number one is Bay Avenue specific. Number two is commercially owned, and number three is a special use permit, right, Tracy?
Yeah.
For a town event.
Yeah. And nothing about when the establishment is closed, take that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want to say specifically a town event, because I know that there are things like large family reunions that get food trucks, and that is not a town event. So I don't know whether I put in that last one.
So not town events, special events with town approval?
Yes.
We were talking about, you were talking about Festive Fridays and things
Yeah.
along those lines. So somebody comes to the town and says, look, I want to bring in a food truck
For a
Birthday
reunion, family reunion.
and you could allow that for that afternoon to allow them to park it on a street even with a special use permit. So I think Jim's saying take town event. There should be a
Generically, special event.
Special,
Special.
Well, that,
town approved special event or something like that.
Okay, I mean, I've got enough that we'll bring something back to you.
Okay.
Towns, or whether it be a town event or special event, because town events to me are already separate, but special event sounds fine, you know, a wedding or whatever, they have to get an approval already from us, but we're saying for the food truck specifically, since that's why this is, that would fall under the cup.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Well, we'll work on it again and bring it back. Yeah, this is good
Okay.
feedback. Any other areas of this?
any other?
I think just when you go back and make that update, look at, I know we're talking about Bait Avenue, when you're talking about the generators, you specifically say toward the beach.
Okay.
Think about what's the proper language for that. It could be specifically called out, for those on Bay Avenue, it has to be towards the beach. But, you know, for others that may be for other events that are not on Bay Avenue, towards the beach doesn't make sense.
Mr. Town Manager, I have a question for you.
Yes.
With the future beach plan, is there a plan to put in electrical service for food
There
trucks?
is.
Right, so then that eliminates the generators like they did in the park.
It would. Yes, it would.
Yes, okay,
Good.
I wanted to ask.
But we still want to put it in here for other areas.
Yes, yes,
And then we think that kind of ties up the noise
yes.
section. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Plus-
It will.
plus the cement.
But you have to remember, we don't know how long it's going to take to be able to implement that plan unless council.
I went down there yesterday, nothing happened yet, still, so let me know.
And then one last question in all this, the hours of operation, say till 8:30, I think. When we have Festive Fridays, those food trucks are there till 9 or 9:30. Is the special use allow them to get outside?
It does.
That,
It's the overlay.
as long as that's overlaid and, you know, yeah, that's fine. I'm done.
Okay. Anything else on this ZTA? Okay, so we'll wait to see what happens on the comeback on that. Report of officers and committees. There wasn't anything in the packet, so that's nothing. Nothing on standing staff reports. Okay, announcements. Next meeting is going to be August the 4th at 6 p.m. First Tuesday,
You said August the 4th?
August 4th. Is that is correct? That is a Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else from any of the commissioners? Then can I have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tracy. Damien, nice to meet you. Welcome aboard.
One thing that I love about this group
Across the street,
is
close-up shop.
Here?
Yes.
we spend
Oh, really?
so many
Yes.
decisions and staff looking at this, and you can come here and you